OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Board Gosh Energy.
Hurling. It's anyone's game.
Welcome along to the Hurling Pod. It is All-Ireland final weekend. Once again, for the second year in a row, it's going to be Limerick and Kilkenny locking horns in the decider this coming Sunday. Limerick have got the chance to win 5 in 6 seasons, and they could become the first county since Kilkenny to win 4 in a row if they're lifting the Liam McCarthy this weekend. While Kilkenny are hoping to be crowned champions for the first time since 2015. It feels a long time when you consider Kilkenny's illustrious history. Delighted to say, as normal, we've got Paul Murphy, James Skehill here. How are you getting on, lads?
How's it going, lads?
Good, how are things?
All-Ireland final week, Murph. What kind of emotions does it evoke when you think back? What would it have been like as a player 4 or 5 days out from the final?
Yeah, it's, I suppose, different years had different emotions. I remember my first one, 2011, I had no nerves coming into the final, slept the night before, and was probably ignorance was bliss in that regard. I obviously knew there was no attention on me in the corner, and it was all on Tommy and Henry and these lads. So kind of blissfully just sauntered into an All-Ireland final and no nerves. But I remember even fast forward to the following year, around a Wednesday, just randomly, just getting a whack of nerves sitting at home. And maybe probably didn't do a whole lot the week before that final, and not keeping the mind occupied is also another probably downside in a run into a final. So I think you'll see a lot of players this week, wanting to maybe go into work, do their job and let the week slowly come around, as opposed to, sitting at home, feet on the couch, and all you have nothing to do, only think about the final. So, look, I have great memories. I always loved the excitement coming into the final. Always loved going into training, and there's obviously great anticipation. Everybody you meet is talking about the final, asking you how it's going to go, and there's, you start seeing the colour going up around Kilkenny and stuff like that as well. So, look, there are always obviously great times. It's where you want to be, and it's summer hurling. So I have not only fond memories of the week and the run to the finals.
When you're that bit closer to Dublin, Murph, in Kilkenny, did you sleep in your own bed and then make the way up to Dublin on the way to the final?
Yeah. At most for us, we're very lucky that way that we never had to spend more than, I suppose, an hour and 20 on a bus on the way up to Dublin. Particularly the day of even an All-Ireland final, where you'd have the Garda escort from Kilkenny the whole way up, because obviously the traffic on those days would be that bit more. But yeah, the luxury of sleeping in your own bed, I think any player would take that the night before a final. But look, you look at great Kerry teams and everything down through the years that say they've never slept in their bed the night before an All-Ireland final. I'm not sure the logistics for them, but other teams, I'm sure it's not a desired thing to do to be able to have to sleep in a hotel, but it's necessary also. But for us, it was great. You're sitting at home, you're watching your own telly, having a cup of tea, and go to bed then that evening. Better chance of sleeping, despite the fact there's inevitably a small bit of nerves the night before. But I always enjoyed that, just that bit of comfort that you're sitting at home and get to sleep in your own bed the night before the final.
Skehill, I think the only thing that's really inevitable is you're going to have a more colourful story about your preparations for All-Ireland final week. So, semi-finals, you're telling us about going down into the bog and having to get
that was the final.
That was the final.
Even worse.
Yeah. That was the 2012 final the first day, yeah. But that's as I said previously, that is not the type of preparation you want to get involved in. That is the worst thing. When I see Murph, I could just picture Murph kind of going around the house, tipping around, doing a few bits, keeping the mind occupied.
Two cucumbers over the eyes there on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and nice kind of relaxing music in the background, and you're petting a dog.
Whale music in the background.
Whereas I'm a foot deep in bog water. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, see, Murph, we're living contrasting lifestyles.
Skehill, that's what I'm saying. Like, you want to keep your week as close to what your normal week is, and for you, that's being knee deep in bog water. Like, so it's just that's natural. Would you not agree?
Yeah, and you being your job is doing fuck all. Yeah. There's a phrase
awful shots be fired. Shots fired there.
There's a phrase in poker, Murph, never raise if you can't match the re-raise. As soon as you started, I said, I'm going to hit him with this one. No.
You're getting ready for Thursday, so geez, Canning won't be safe.
I'm getting warmed up.
Well, I think if Derek Lyng was listening at the moment, or John Kiley, I don't think any of their players will be recommended the Skehill plan of going to the bog on the Saturday of an All-Ireland final. But by your own admission, you played quite well the next day.
Yeah, it was one of the better ones, like, in fairness, and I do think there was pros and cons to the situation. Now, again, as I said, I wouldn't recommend it. However, I think I was coerced by my uncle, who was home for a couple of days and wanted to get through everything around the locality and the farm and you name it, and decided that the match was of secondary importance, to the bog. So that was not a good time. But like I would normally be on the back of the bus and I'd be quite conversive with the lads around me. The way when you get into like a routine, the seats in the bus remain the same for years, and it was always the same clientele around you. But for this, I think I actually slept the whole way up. I think I slept on the morning of the final. Grand. I was grand and, feeling fresh then after that. And lo and behold, it got off to a good start. And it was a draw, obviously. We won that still. It's a major regret. And still, when I hear about Henry, I think he had a press conference or something like that when they asked him during his retirement, like, what was his best memory? And it was 2012 winning that. That was a tough one to swallow. So, moving on, William. Moving on.
So that would indicate to me in Galway, despite coming from the West Coast, you were travellers on the day to the final too.
Yeah, I as Murph was speaking there, I was trying to actually remember, did we ever have a situation where we stayed up? And no one actually come to my memory. I think the only one we ever set up for was the under 21 final. At the time, it coincided with the Camogie finals. That was like 07, 08. Murph, do you remember that as well in Croke Park?
Yeah.
So for reasons beyond me, I don't know why we set up there because, you'd imagine the crowd would be a lot less than from a senior day. But I think every other day we would have drove up on the bus, obviously. And I just think it was like that. It was a sense of familiarity. I don't think people, me inclusive, I don't like sleeping anywhere else the days of games. I don't like hotels because whether it's air conditioning getting wrong, it's noise from other people, other residents, it's different type of breakfast, etc. It's just there's too many variables. Whereas when I'm at home, you're still in your same routine, your same bed, etc. And it's the only way to guarantee, as close as possible, to guarantee a regular night's sleep. So, for us, I think to this day, they don't stay up either. I think it's always travel up. So, business as usual.
I promise we'll move this away from a hotel podcast now in a moment. But Murph, it was announced end of last week, Kilkenny and Limerick are both going home after the final. They're not staying up. There was something very traditional about it, the idea that when the teams had won or lost the final, they would stay in usually one of two hotels in Dublin, and then the next day supporters would come along in the morning and kind of mingle them a bit while they're having breakfast, and the RT crew would be there afterwards. It always to me seemed like one of the great traditions. Now, Kilkenny didn't stay there last year. I think Kilkenny went down after the final back into the city of Kilkenny as opposed to staying in Dublin. This time round, very difficult to get hotels on Sunday, and that tends to be the case in Dublin quite a bit now at the moment. But it feels like a real break from tradition that no matter who lifts the McCarthy this weekend, it won't be in a Dublin hotel afterwards.
Yeah, and it is part of the tradition as well. I think anybody who's been involved in those days, obviously enough, particularly in a winning hotel, like it's kind of like your county has been picked up and thrown into a hotel in Dublin, and there's people from every angle. Like, let's say we would have always been back to City West, and even like when you arrive back to City West and you're coming down the avenue, and there's supporters everywhere, and it's part of the celebration that you're now coming back into the Kilkenny people, and you're getting to celebrate, and you start to meet your relations or your club mates and all this. And, even the following morning, like the party goes on into the early hours, and, you'll be going down for breakfast and you're meeting lads only going to bed and different things, and lads are having a laugh, and you see some of the players, chatting to lads that were chatting to the night before. And there's just a great part of the celebration there. And even going into the children's hospital, that was one of the things the following morning, like that even regardless what lads did, you'd be up the following morning, you put on the shirt and you were into the children's hospital, and like that was a big part of it as well. So like all those things, and also there was even a part there where, let's say you come back from the children's hospital and you'd go down the road. Then we used to go into a pub in Salins there and have a few pints, and it was kind of you're in your own little bubble before the mayhem of going back to a homecoming where you're all never going to be in the same room again. Like it was literally that was the last moment where between that and the bus home, you were having a bit of crack together, you were reliving the match, you were talking about what happened the night before, and all that was just a brilliant part of it. Because once you got back to Kilkenny, everybody went to the four corners. There was lads, spread out. There's lads talking to lads, and that was the end of it. So it's a pity that the teams have to go back, but it's just look. That is the times we're in. They just have to do it at the moment,
So I'm not going to change the experience too much, Gal. Like Kilkenny, I think we've already announced they're going to Langton's come what may this Sunday. They're going to have a meal afterwards, and they're going to stay in the city then for the night. And I think Limerick's plan is they'll have a homecoming on Monday if they were to do the 4 in a row. I don't know. Do you have kind of any graw for the previous tradition of staying in City West or the Burlington? Where did Galway stay in 2017?
Well, it's very interesting you asked that question, Will, because ironically, about 2 months ago, I lost €100 to Niall Healy, ex-Galway hurler, when we bet on which hotel we stayed in. I was full sure it was the Burlington.
What did you say?
It was the City West.
Jesus. There's a fair difference in that. One is
here. I was certain, and I mean, I was certain that it was the Burlington, right? And I put the hand out to shake it, €100, and he looked at me kind of confused, and he shook my hand, and I texted Aidan Hart, and he said City West. I went, fuck. That's €100 gone straight away.
Jesus.
Like, You know, so Will, to answer your question in a roundabout manner, yes, it was the City West Hotel. Yeah. Now I can't remember the layout. I won't lie to you. I remember the heat the night before, but that was it. Yeah. In other years, we would have, I think, always been in the Burlington. There was a year we were supposed to go. Actually, around the 2012 year, Murph. It was Regency the first day, and then I think it was the Burlington the second day, the replay, and then in 15, I think it was Burlington again. 17 was City West. 18, I genuinely can't remember. Genuinely can't remember where I was. Can't tell you.
See, Cody must have a contact in City West, because every year Kilkenny got there, it seemed to be City West.
Well, I think it was because the Leinster semi-final was played before the Munster final semi-final, let's say. So like the Leinster one was the weekend before. So if you were successful in winning Leinster and then you won your semi-final, you knew you were there, so you could go and book it first. So I think that was the thing. And I think obviously the size of the county boards would rather have a lot of supporters in the hotel if they could, and obviously City West was the biggest hotel that could actually facilitate it. So I think that was a lot of it's a handy one to get to as well, particularly for you going home. You're a quarter way down the road as it is. So that was the benefit of being in the Leinster final. I'm fairly sure that was the logistics behind it.
That probably doesn't help if you're a regular client as well. You've been to about 15 All-Ireland finals in a row, and every year City West know they're getting repeat business. I'd say they're probably booking Kilkenny in for a spot every year before the championship even gets underway. Something that broke just before we go on air, before we get towards the final itself, was this, which is Wexford GAA saying they wish to announce that following the completion of a comprehensive review of the 2023 season, it's been decided not to extend Darragh Egan's initial 2-year term as senior hurling manager. We did speculate a bit about this, Skehill, that he was going to be under pressure no matter what. They stayed up, didn't go down to the McDonagh on the last day. They beat Kilkenny, but the feeling was going to be there that after losing to Westmeath and not getting out of the group stages of the Leinster Championship, Darragh Egan was probably going to be under pressure. Now, I thought when a few weeks ago they said they were going to take another 2 weeks after Darragh Egan had met with them, that maybe he was going to stay on for a third season. Are you surprised that they have decided to go a different direction here?
Well, if you rewind a few weeks ago, I suppose when their championship concluded, like I said here myself that he was going to be under fair pressure because the results that he garnered over the last 2 years wouldn't be what the Wexford Public or County Board or clubs alike would have gotten used to, because they've had a relatively good run of success over the last 4 or 5 years when you go back as far as like 17, 18. So I thought that he was going to be under pressure, that he'd have to probably kind of prove his case somewhat in a meeting or somewhat, or to the board to get re-ratified. But then I believe kind of a statement came out from the players saying that collectively they wanted him to stay on. So when that kind of statement came out, I said, yeah, okay, he's going to stay now, because if there's hunger for the players for him to stay, they obviously hold him in high regard. And I thought the county board had sided him, and I didn't think that we'd be reading today what we're reading now with him being effectively moved aside. That's what it is. I think it was 2 years with a third year option. So the county board have obviously chosen not to pick up the third year option, and at least they're open for a new person. So I'd say it's disappointing for him, because like he would have been well thought of coming into the role, having getting experience in Tipperary in the club game, and it's obviously. It's a supremely difficult position to maintain as being a senior county manager. Because there's only a select few roles. When you think about the amount of counties at top tier, Division 1 status, we're talking 10 or 11. So like when you're effectively lose one of those jobs, tough pill to swallow. But again, like he's a sound guy, good person. Like he's a gentleman off the pitch. So I think that an opportunity will arise pretty soon for him.
I kind of thought, Murph, we were going to get round a full cycle of the McCarthy counties this time round, not changing managers after all they changed last summer, because looks like Davy Fitz is now staying in Waterford. There's going to be no changes in Cork. Liam Call's not going to be leaving Tipperary, and then obviously the Limerick management is in situ at the moment with all the success they've had. Derek Lyng is definitely getting a second year after Kilkenny getting to the final. We discussed last week a little bit about Lohan and about Henry, and we kind of think they're going to be staying for another year. Mihal's only into the second year of his programme there in Dublin as well. This feeling that maybe this is going to settle and we wouldn't see change, and then Darragh Egan has been replaced today by Wexford. We'll see who the successor is going to be. What's your reaction?
Yeah, it is still a surprise. Like everything Skehill said there is 100%, and we did allude to it there that undoubtedly he was going to be under a bit of pressure, but I think we had kind of pointed out that many of the performances this year, you would put back on the players as well. Like, I mean, certainly management are going to have to be responsible. It's their business to have the players in flying order for a match day. But, some of the performances led you to believe that maybe it lent more so towards the players, and also the injuries they had. They had a lot of injuries during the year to a lot of key players, Lee Chin, Matthew Hannon, Liam Ryan. You lost so many players had injuries that even on that front, it wasn't an easy year for them. But I just thought for one more year, I thought at least anyway, that it'd give Darragh Egan another crack. As Skehill said there, like what I hear from, and even from speaking from Wexford players, is that, you know, he's really liked, he's really well gotten, and they can see what he's about. Maybe just didn't work out this year. So I just thought based on that alone, he would get a third year. So I was very surprised to see, you know, just before we came on here that no, they're on the hunt for a new manager. So look, I'm sure it'll be disappointing for Darragh Egan, but look, won't be by any means the end of the road. I mean, he appears to be a top quality manager, and you can guarantee there'll be people knocking on his door very soon to get him in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we speculated, Skehill, before after the Westmeath win against Wexford. We're thinking, could this be the result that now convinces Wexford, let's bring Joe Fortune, one of our own, with what he's done with Westmeath in the last couple of seasons, in, if there was going to be a change this summer? Like, I'm sure he's going to be considered one of the front runners here. David Herity is now available after leaving Kildare as well. Yeah,
well, I think if obviously when you're assessing a manager, you're assessing their team's performance first and foremost, and you're assessing their kind of the way they carry themselves, their demeanour, the way they speak to media. So Westmeath have performed, over the last number of years, they've been admirable in fairness. Every time Joe Fortune speaks, I like the guy. Like, I like the way he speaks. He's very honest. He's kind of endearing to his players, I'd imagine. He comes across very well, even when, unfortunately the team shifts a bit of a hiding, which is not their fault, because we've gone through the golfing class amongst players from Westmeath and the Kilkennys and so on, and he still comes across kind of graceful and in good stead. So I'd imagine for the Wexford people below, he's going to be definitely an option. I read an article, I'm not sure what platform it was actually on a few weeks ago, about, I think it was from Wexford GA, that there was 5 or 6 potential candidates. So he was one of them. Keith Rossiter, the Trinity manager, was another kind of favourite amongst the public. So I'd imagine they'll go, no, I'm just shooting the breeze, I'd imagine they'll go in-house this time, because it's been a while. I think you'll have to go back as far as Liam Dunn, would I be right to say, since they've had one of their own managers?
Yeah.
Like, they're going back to, what year is that? 14, 15, something like that. So you're nearing on 8-9 years. So I'd imagine there's probably a bit of a want amongst the public and clubs to get someone in from their own neck of the woods. And as things stand, I'd say he probably is the front runner. But then again, there's people when they come available, it's hard to bypass them. Who knows what Darren Gleeson's going to do? David Herity, who knows what he's going to do? So there's people in positions, like, who knows what managers who've been managers of county teams over the last number of years that have left roles and were sitting idle, if they're going to get contacted as say and put into the role. So I'd say it's going to be an interesting space to watch.
Yeah. Does it look like an interesting county to take over, Murph? Because there is a certain feeling that maybe that team, who may well have peaked in 2019 as it transpired, might be coming towards the end of a cycle now, or do Wexford still have enough good hurlers within that group that would be an attractive prospect?
No, I think it would be an attractive prospect for a certain caliber of manager. Like, that job wouldn't be for everyone, and you could say that probably for every job in the country, bar maybe the Limerick one, that you want to find the right fit for a job. There is great caliber of players, and if you look at lads like who are seen as the elder statespeople there, like the likes of Lee Chin and Dee O'Keefe and these lads, like, to me those lads still look like they still have a lot to offer. Like, and I'm even probably even phrasing that wrong in what I'm saying. It's just, but these are the perceived elder statespeople of those. But like, take injury out of the equation with those lads. Those lads have a huge amount to offer for a few years for Wexford, So, and that coming through with, look, we spoke with likes of Oisin Pepper and these lads coming through, like, who have shown serious flair and potential, likes of Rory O'Connor and these lads, obviously, who's well established at this stage. Like, they do have the hurlers. And the one thing you'll get out of Wexford as well is, we've seen it from the first night with the Welsh Cup down below in Wexford Park. Like, they have huge support, like, and the crowd really does get behind them, and probably that was galvanised off the back of the likes of 2019 and bringing back that bit of silverware in the Leinster final. Wexford people are brilliant for following the team. They're probably very hard on themselves as well at times in terms of being critical, because they have that tradition in the county of the records and just the tradition that they have. They're a very proud county, but what I think you get back from that pride is huge support. People will give you time down there and they'll give you buy-in. I always remember going to Wexford Park, or even in Kilkenny. Granted, we have a rivalry, but the crowd were always really supportive of the team, and the team responded to the crowd in that regard. And I think what was just missing that year is just that just didn't appear to be there. That connection was kind of lost because the performances weren't there on the pitch. So it is understandable in some ways that the County Board have opted for a change, because they know when Wexford is going well, They bring huge energy to games. Okay, they mightn't turn up every day, but they do show form each year. You know, they cause teams serious problems. And this year, they just didn't cause any problems. So I think what the County Board are looking for is, you know, they're not too far removed from that connection with the crowd and from those good times. So maybe a small tweak, trying to get it back on the road. Maybe that's what they're thinking before it maybe drifts a small bit too far and a bit of belief is lost in the county.
Now, sometimes we're hard on James Skehill on this podcast. This is a chance to balance the scale somewhat. This was an inspired moment from James Skehill on Saturday morning. With the terrible rain, I think there was a phrase, looks like rain, Ted, in some TV show back in the day. Fact check. So we went off and we did the fact check. And here's the relevant clip, which has been beautifully picked out by James Skehill and used perfectly in context to make it work.
Looks like rain, Ted.
Now, Skehill, does this mean you've been watching Father Ted behind our backs, or how did you know this reference?
Listen to me, as bad not as you may think I am, I do pick up a certain amount of lines from when clubmates or friends are talking about Father Ted. So when I saw the bloody pond that had established itself in my field, I went, this is a perfect opportunity now to gain some points back in the world of the hurling pod.
Jesus, that was good.
Actually, one of those ones, during your press and sending the tweet, I was like, yeah, I'm happy with this one. This will get me no hassle. This will get me no abuse. No DMs. So I said, this is all good fun. Send.
It was beautifully done. And then on Sunday, we had another Father Ted moment. I was unaware. Murph apparently listens to far more radio than I do and had heard a discussion about this, where the Sunday game music, until Sunday, I didn't know it had been absolutely ripped off a banging 1960s pop tune from Spain.
Yo soy una yeye y tú no eres yeye, pero llegó el amor y nos.
So I quite love the idea that some RTE composer was on his hollybops at some point, probably in Majorca, sitting down. This comes on the radio and he goes, do you know what, this would be the perfect tune if we ever bring out a song for our live GA coverage. So I thought that was glorious, and I couldn't but think of another Father Ted reference at the moment that I'd listened to this. I'm convinced, Skehill, if we do convince you to watch Father Ted, you will love the Eurosong version. This is right in your wheelhouse.
Well, I've asked people around the place, what's the best episode to watch? And I normally, when you have a kind of a series or a film, generally a scene or a certain episode to get picked out, you know, nearly unanimously. This fucking show, like, everyone has a different element, a different, like, Graham Norton, like Brendan Grace. Someone sent me on something about a bishop getting kicked up the hole. You would, yeah. That's a two-part though.
But see, the best part about it, not to cut across it, the best part about it is, like, there's such, you can just use these examples in every part of your life. Like, as in, I'd often use the Bishop Len Brennan one there getting kicked up the arse. It's like, you know, something happens there and someone couldn't believe that it's after happening. Now, Skehill, you won't get this, but, like, basically they convinced Len Brennan, they kicked him up the arse, and they convinced him it didn't happen because it'd be too outlandish for it to happen. It's ridiculous. There's no way it could happen. So, like, I'd often use the circumstance of, like, that someone is so baffled something happened, they'd be like, sure, it's like Len Brennan getting kicked up the arse. It's like, there's no way that could have just happened. So,
but I have a group there, like I said, with the middle-aged men for a couple of lads at home, and I sent on the clip, and I said, what scene is this? Details, please. And it's Ted kicking Bishop Brennan up the arse. And I said, why? Why is he kicking him? Oh my God, he said, he lost a bet to his mortal enemy.
That damn Father Dick Byrne.
Yeah.
and over, like, this is where it gets ridiculous. He lost an over 80s indoor soccer game.
Yeah.
Over 80s.
Yeah, over 80s.
I had to read it again and go, he says over 80s. Like 80-year-old men, like, are
80-year-old
priests, yeah.
What the fuck is going on?
That's a brilliant Skehill. That's an absolutely brilliant one. I can't think of what's the Italian priest there that he only needs 2 nurses to go up a flight of stairs.
Oh, is he Father Sensi, I think, or something like that?
Yeah, Cincino or something.
Cincino, yeah.
The Italian priest.
And Father Jack they thought he was on trial for Liverpool. It turns out he was on trial in Liverpool. I think was the punchline of the joke.
So what are you telling me? So the best episode to watch is the Eurovision one, is it?
A lot of them are self-contained. I wouldn't recommend the Len Brennan arc purely because you'd have to watch 2 episodes if you were to watch that, because it obviously has the first part with the football and the second part with him getting kicked up the arse. But
like you'd enjoy that's we were kind of half suggesting the Beast of Craggy Island was a good one to watch because there's sheep in it and stuff, and like you might enjoy that one. But it's also like there's rumors as to what the beast is like. You know,
hang on, go back. Why the fuck would I enjoy it because there's sheep in it?
Let's not just get into that.
The words come out of that man's mouth.
I apologise. That's just rolled out off the tongue there.
You're a man of the man.
There's actually someone typed back to you there earlier that you might know something. Was it Culture Club that Matt Cooper has? You won't be invited onto Culture Club, but I was thinking you might be invited onto Agriculture Club. That could be something you'd be invited onto. Yeah.
I'm feeding the country. I'm not actually a full-time farmer. Like people think I am. I'm actually not. Like,
but in fairness, like I know we're gone completely off the point here, but in fairness, in the WhatsApp, we would like send are we happy enough to be on at 4:00 or whatever, and you will sometimes send in the picture of the front loader of a tractor with 2 bales in front of it.
Yes.
No, 4:00 doesn't suit me. I was 20 past 4. Or a calf upside down in the shed. Like, what do you want us to think? You never send us any of your building stuff. Like, so.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That is a fabulous point, Murph. And in this instance, I am speechless. Yeah, because you've been caught there.
Right. Here's my promise to you, because I just thought of this while we were saying it. Right. So we have to go in and do a sound check and whatever else on Thursday of this week. What I will do is I will download an episode of Father Ted, probably the one with the sheep, and we can show it to you while we're waiting for all that stuff to happen on stage.
Perfect.
How's about that?
That is good.
That sounds good.
That's good use of the board gosh theatre, a full episode of Father Ted.
I'll see if I can put it in the big screen. If they can put a HDMI cable into my laptop and we stick it up, we'll do that. But let's see what happens.
Let's do it.
It is.
Right. Okay. Let's get to the game. Timestamps are going to mean an awful lot to people this week on both YouTube and on the podcast where they go, not sure I want 27 minutes of chat about Father Ted, but here we go. Right, the game itself. This doesn't need a whole lot of hype scale, really. When you consider last few years and the meetings that we've had in All-Ireland finals have been very close between Limerick and Kilkenny. Even last year when Limerick were, I would say, overwhelming favourites going into the final. Limerick win 131 to 226. The 2019 game, which is the last knockout championship game that Limerick have lost, which is against Kilkenny in 2019. And Limerick just edged out Kilkenny in the quarter-final the year before in 2018. And in the qualifiers, Kilkenny won by 3 points in 2017. There's been only really a puck of a ball between them. The only outlier in the results that we've had recently, Skehill, is actually the most recent meeting, which was the league final, where Limerick coasted to victory at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. But in championship, it's been 3 points or less between these teams for the last decade or so. Yeah,
and I think when you're going through records and trying to reference previous games, like the ones you have to focus on is when everything's on the line. That's the championship game. The league is grand. You know, we talk about in this podcast how different teams prepare in different ways. The time of the year, obviously, with Limerick timing their runs, etc. There's an awful lot of chatter about that. So I do put a bit of value on it. I don't put an awful lot of value. Like, I'm not saying it's an absolute certainty that Limerick are going to win solely based off the league final. I'll just go back through years previous and look at what they've matches previous over the last number of weeks and say like their value for the favourites tag. I just checked it there a while ago. They're 4 points favourites on the spread on the bookie side of things, and I think what they've produced to date is kind of a fair reflection. But again, going back through the years, like if you go back, the last 4 previous championship appearances have been, as you said, 2 points, 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, and it's 2-2. That's the split. Like, it's not Limerick winning all games; it's Kilkenny Limerick. So it looks like Kilkenny's turn this time. My only concern is when I'm trying to kind of call the game and say, how are Kilkenny going to beat Limerick, and it's the scoring from play situation. If I look back on last year's final, they were actually 2-17 from play against Limerick, and if I ask myself the question, will they repeat that? I'm not so sure. I can't. They got 113 against Clare, I think, which is kind of below where you need to be at to kind of take over a team like Limerick. So if you're looking at forwards and you're saying, right, Eoin Cody has to have a massive game like he does every day, and look, he's one of these players that produces it every day. TJ has to have a massive game, but they're going to have to get massive games from their supporting cast. Hopefully everyone's be fit. I'm not sure what the story with Skehill, Murphy Michelis, Blanchfield, etc. They need to get lots out of Wally Walsh when he comes on, Billy Ryan, John Donnelly, all these lads, and they're going to have to perform. And it's kind of the same thing I said about Galway a couple of weeks previous when I said, can Galway beat Limerick? I said the same thing. The unit has to perform because Limerick are so well oiled. And I think there's probably an acceptance, I'd say, amongst everyone nationally about that if like Limerick will have to reach, 95%, 90% to beat Kilkenny, but I feel Kilkenny have to reach 100%. Now, I know that's not throwing shade. I just think that's being fair, And so that's my big concern is, can Kilkenny score enough from play to dominate Limerick? Because Limerick, again, they got 2-16 against Galway, which is good shooting in today's game. Galway got 1-9. And we know the situation second half there, but like if you're going to beat a team like Limerick, you're going to have to rattle a repeat of what Limerick or Kilkenny did last year's final, and if not more, because you have to be getting 23, 24 points cumulatively somehow from play to take them over. So it's an interesting game. Like I've made mistakes in the past, lads, by calling games against Kilkenny, and I'm still going to call Limerick, but I'm not the margin that the bookies are saying. This is going to be, I'd say it's going to be tight affair, solely because what's embedded in Kilkenny's DNA is that the ability to perform on a big stage and work hard and sustain that performance for the course of 70 minutes. So again, evidence was shown the last against Clare. They can do it for 70 odd minutes. Their oldest players were nearly working the hardest, and a clip comes to my mind of TJ in the second half back on on his own 21-yard line, clearing the ball, winning a free. So that's kind of the I would call it monumental effort that's going to be needed from everyone, and the squad inclusive, to take down Limerick. So looking forward to a good game.
I'd say, Murphy, won't disagree with the fact that kind of manic effort, aggression, taking the chances are exactly what Kilkenny have to do if they're going to win. And look, we saw a good bit of that against Clare the last time. I know, so much focus is on the save by Eoin Murphy at the end, but we also talked last week about the blocks, the hooks, the kind of necessities that are there outside of talent that Kilkenny brought into that semi-final. They're going to need that in spades on Sunday. Yeah,
Kilkenny know all this, and it's not a case that Kilkenny are feeling slighted that they're going in as underdogs. Inevitably, there's a team going for 4 in a row here. Regardless what happens before this match, Limerick are going to continue to be favourites, and Kilkenny will continue to come in exactly in the position they're in. And they'll be fine with that as well. And they also know that it's going to take an absolutely monumental task to go and beat them. I don't say monumental as in an unrealistic, and that they need loads of things to go their way, but they just know that every player is going to have to hit the heights of their game to go and beat them. But I don't think any player, if you ask them, is under no illusion, if I'm to go win an All-Ireland, that I'm just going to walk my way to an All-Ireland and coast it. All the players that are there, part of the panels, they all want to be playing against the best players. They want to beat the best teams, and they want to be there on their merits. So the idea that you're playing this Limerick team now, and that you know the team has to function, as Skehill said there, at 100%. Kilkenny are under no illusion with that. And I hold my hands up. Of course, Limerick are the absolute favourites. But me as a Kilkenny man, before the final, I fail to give in to myself and say that I can't see anything other than Kilkenny winning, just because that's what it's about. As in when Limerick went to play Galway in 2018, Galway were the favourites. But if you were to ask Limerick fans, were they going up the road believing they're going to be bet by Galway? No, you don't. That's not why you go to All-Ireland finals. You go there believing that something magical could happen here today, and it only takes 70 minutes of hurling. And all I have to ask myself in that, for it to happen, do Kilkenny have the players? And I believe they do. Do I have the panel? They absolutely do. And the biggest thing I took from the match against Clare was that when the game was in the balance, Kilkenny were able to introduce exactly the right player each time to bring the flow back towards Kilkenny. So the first example I saw was Eoin Cody coming in for John Donnelly. And I was looking going, that's not a like-for-like swap. That's not bringing on a player. And it's also not a swap whereby you're just throwing somebody into the mix. Kilkenny saw that, okay, Clare are running at us now. We're after striking a small few long balls. We need to calm it down, and we need to carry this ball through the middle. Eoin Cody, great player in close contact, great sidestep, is able to carry the ball. First ball he got 30 seconds on, pops it off, ball over the bar, and then gets the score himself. You have Richie Hogan brought on again to bring that little bit of, I suppose, dynamic movement inside the full forward line. All the players had an influence when they came on. So when I saw that, I said, well, actually, in order to try and sustain 70 minutes with Limerick, you're going to have to produce something like that. And then the other indications I would see is that, Galway were able to cause problems for Limerick, and undoubtedly able to cause problems. Well, Kilkenny were ahead of this Galway team, so they caused problems for Galway in their own right. Clare went and bet Limerick this year. Granted, at a different period of the year, nevertheless, they went and they bet them. Kilkenny went and bet Clare, so it's. I genuinely believe that if we were going into this match and Clare were playing on Sunday, people would probably be close to saying it's 50-50, because a lot of the people outside of Limerick would want to believe that Clare are going to win it. Probably at the moment, people are probably saying it's a 75-25, maybe Kilkenny and Limerick. That, Limerick are maybe even further than that. I'm not sure, but it's just funny that Kilkenny are coming in such a position that'll suit them down to the ground, that nevertheless that they've performed against teams, there's still that element of doubt that they can go and beat Limerick. But they won't believe that. They know that they can go and beat them. And like I said, they know that things have to go really right for them and that they have to stifle Limerick in a few areas.
I'm going to ask this in an if circumstance, Murph, and I will ask Skehill an if after that. If David Blanchfield isn't able to play, and at the moment there's plenty of speculation that he has a chest injury or possibly a rib injury and won't be able to play, that came out of the Clare game, who plays there instead of him in the half-back line if he's missing?
I'd say Corcoran just slots right in for him. Like for like player, really, like two top class players, and Darragh Corcoran is just, he's a brilliant player all around. And there wasn't a whole lot between the two of them, really, in terms of both of them are very similar, and both of them had played really well in the Leinster final. Just Blanchfield probably had that bit more of a presence in the Leinster final, and maybe so in training as well afterwards, that subsequently got him his position. It'd be really disappointing for David Blanchfield, because as far as I'm concerned at the moment, it's between him and Burns for the right half back for an All-Star. He's really pushing hard there. I know people might disagree with that, but look, he's in the conversation for it, and really strong game. He's one of those players who he might be mentioned afterwards for man of the match, or he might be mentioned, too much in the newspapers in the day after, but gets through a huge amount of work and, stifles a lot of really important positions on the pitch where, when the ball lands, he's in there, he's getting involved, he's stopping the opposition team from getting a hold of the ball and going on the attack. Does a lot of nitty-gritty work, similar enough to the way Conor Fogarty was highlighted the last day against Clare. David Blanchfield does a lot of that stuff, so it'd be unfortunate for him if he isn't fit for Sunday. He's really playing well. But I do believe that Corcoran can go in there and fit in really well, exactly the way that Blanchfield fills that position, and fill it in a very similar way. The two boys are 6'5". They're very rangy players. They're happy going forward. They're well able to defend, and they're great in the sky. So I do believe both of them are really good. But I think maybe just Blanchfield has that small bit more experience, just a Corcoran at the moment. And it does count for something in an All-Ireland final.
Be tough for Blanchfield to miss this, Murph, because last year I thought his league form was really good. His championship form has been good this summer. You would have thought that coming off the field last week, he's very much set to start the final. To miss it with injury would be very harsh after what he's done in his kind of breakthrough couple of years with the team here.
Yeah, exactly. He's put in a lot of hard yards. Like last year in the league, he was probably the young player of the league, really, and just didn't manage to keep pushing on then into the championship. Like you said, this year now he's really established himself. And if he had this year and one or two more years together, that's really him established as a Kilkenny player, and being in that half back line. Like you could see him doing a decade or so in that position, because he just seems to be such a strong player, and playing in an All-Ireland final of this magnitude against Limerick would stand to him a huge amount. Regardless of the result, it would stand to him a huge amount. So look, on a personal level, it'd be very disappointing if he's out. I only heard really after the game, talking to people in the street and stuff, that saying he was out. I didn't even realise during the game that he had picked up an injury. So I don't really know what the situation is, and I don't think Kilkenny have really confirmed yet. I could be wrong, but I don't think they've confirmed that he is out. So look, when the team is named, it'll be disappointing if he's not there for all involved. As a Kilkenny supporter and as a fella who knows David Blanchfield, he'd love to be there. But we'll wait and see, I suppose, how the week plays out. That he could very well be named Friday evening, and none of this even matters. Like, this conversation doesn't even equate.
I hope he's on the pitch. I hope that Declan Hannon is on the pitch as well, Skehill. That's the if. I'm asking you is if Declan Hannon doesn't get back in time. And John Kiley was saying last week in the media day, and I appreciate that was 10 or 11 days out from the final, that he's saying, look, we don't know. We're probably going to be the middle of next week. We'll see how much he can do in the pitch, and then we'll test it out and see if he can actually play. If Hannon was to miss out, would you keep Will O'Donoghue at 6, or did Limerick lose too much in midfield by moving him against Galway?
I think they lost a bit, to be fair. I suppose maybe the second half when Limerick, it actually sounds strange coming out of my mouth. Limerick were so dominant in the second half that it's hard to find issues or weaknesses with their team. But I certainly wouldn't call it a weakness. I thought he did pretty well. He's a dominant force there, very physical. I don't think he gets enough praise for his skill level that he's able to, with him going forward. Everyone associates with kind of this batter and ram, breaking up plays, mainly kind of being a defensive operation type person, but he's deadly going forward. And I just thought maybe the midfield, especially in the first half, missed a touch, But like that, look, Limerick got right back on song in the second half and just, I suppose, ran to an emphatic victory. It's the only way you can explain it. So there's no real evidence to say that he was the cause or root of any issue that Galway had in the first half. Not fair. If Declan Hannon is injured, and again, I find it hard to see, like, when they called him being out, a couple of weeks ago, that just kind of said, how can they call it so early? You know what I mean? What kind of issue is it with his knee? And so you start thinking, sure, it can't be a cruciate ligament or anything majorly serious. It's something that can heal itself. So you're saying maybe it is just a case of time. So he's had a few weeks now. So, and I hope he's playing. Like I want to see him on the pitch and keep breaking records as a captain, etc. With lifting cups and whatnot. But I can't state enough, right, how important it is to be sharp. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I do always say when players are injured, like, you need a right run into games, especially these big games where the pitch is fast and they're playing the best opposition in the country. And, like, what has Declan done over the last number of weeks? Because it's an injury, it's very hard for him to be mobile. Can he go on the ball well? Fair enough, right? But how sharp is he? Is he his usual self? That's a question that none of us can answer. And that's for the management team, and they're in the best position possible to answer that. But again, from a neutral supporter here, I truthfully want to see everyone. I want to see Mullen, hopefully his hand is fine after last day. I want to see Blanchfield, I want to see Hannon, etc. All these players, and then just go toe to toe. If he's available and he's fit, and like he's got a baseline of work done, you have to put him in. I think Limerick becomes stronger straight away when you're putting Will into his usual position and put Declan in centre back. It's only if there's a question over his physicality, like with regards to his knee or his hurling sharpness, then that's where you're kind of tossing a coin. But I'd probably expect him to see him out there. Like, he didn't look in too much pain after the Galway game. Again, you take little nuggets. You look at his body language, everything. He seemed to be fairly mobile, going around clapping hands with lads, like nothing too serious, thankfully. No, obviously, ailments or crutches and whatnot. So, I'd expect him to be playing. Hopefully he is. And he's a vital cog to them, because what he does in big games is he provides just moments of calmness. And again, like, I just pictured the Munster final last year when he got that point, injury time. Like that's just a colossal act from your captain and centre back. So the games call for that. These type of games call for those moments, let's say, when things are kind of going erratic around you, that you have people like Declan Hannon who can save the ship and come up with big scores, big times, because he's a great link man for Limerick. Time will tell.
Murph, we maybe didn't get a chance really properly to talk about Dan Morrissey last week, and we were speculating ahead of the game that they could go like the league final, put him at 6 and just kind of go, right, you've done this before and we're going to trust you. Does it maybe actually speak, the more I thought about it during the week, actually to what a good job he's done at 3? And I know we've got a few listeners, and we'll go to their comments in a little bit, who've asked about him potentially even being a hurler of the year with the way that he's played at fullback this year. Maybe not switching him to 6 actually speaks to how good he's been in the 3 position. Yeah,
like, I mean, I don't know, it's a controversial statement, but in my opinion, it's harder to find a number 3 than it is to find a number 6. Like, 6 can play a more influential role on the pitch, obviously, because they're further up, they're more in the ball winning area, they will most likely hold a lot more ball during the game. But number 3 is a very hard position to play, and we've seen it with teams over the years. It's not simple. Like, if you're out in number 6, you can kind of drift onto ball and you can kind of find your way into the game, and you can work off the midfielders and you can track back and work off the full back line. But it's not one-dimensional playing full back, but you're standing invariably on the edge of the 14. You're marking a top-class forward. The balls, there's lethal balls coming into you, and the ball that's coming in, if you don't control it or know what to do in the right situation, a goal situation is going to come from it. And if you look at, like, my memory of the game against Galway with Limerick is just Dan Morrissey just making really good decisions. Like, he's not going out there, he doesn't care if he's man the match or not man the match or anything. He's going out there just to do the job that he's meant to do, and he's happy to do that job and does it really well. And, like, I remember him running for a ball with Conor Whelan. Big man. And, like, I don't think the first thing we say about Dan Morrissey is pace. Not that we think he's slow, but, we know what other people for pace. In a foot race out to where the Hill 16 made the Cusack stand in the second half, it's actually in the first half, Dan Morrissey and Conor Whelan running out. Dan Morrissey just about reaches there first, gets a pull and pulls on the ball out towards the 45 over the sideline, just to basically kill that ball dead, let the Limerick backs reset, and then work from there. He didn't think, I have to go out here and rise this ball, take on Conor Whelan, and he knew all I have to do is get here first and it might sound simple, and it might sound like, why would you be impressed by that? In the heat of a moment, under pressure from Conor Whelan, that's a really good decision. And that's just a simple idea, that because Conor Whelan has to do a lot more there than you have to do. All you have to do is stifle him and get the ball out. He has to get the ball, take you on, put it over the bar. He could hang it up in the net. But I just think things like that, shows why Dan Morrissey, which I think you're right, and it's a great point, that maybe they don't move him out there because they only have one or two players that can play full back, but they maybe have a few more that can play centre back. And the influence of Dan Morrissey standing there is, I suppose, you could equate it to what the job Declan Hannon does at centre back, in that he fits the glove really well. He fits it there. He controls the area, and he's going to make smart decisions. And like, as for everything else, his skill and everything is undoubted. You never see him make a mistake. You just don't see Dan Morrissey making a mistake. So I think it's a fair point. I think you're onto something, that maybe we were a little bit naive thinking that centre back was so important for them that they had to feel it that Dan Morrissey would come out. Maybe they were so concerned about, not concerned, but they put so much value on full back that, listen, this fella's doing such a good job for us there. Maybe that's where his true value is.
In a kind of a related note, Skehill, how do Limerick deal with Eoin Cody, who's coming in fantastic form? What we saw from him against Clare, being a difference maker. Seems the championship has gone on. He's been scoring throughout, but really, really important performance the last day in the semi-final. How are Limerick going to curb his influence?
Like, I suppose he's always been a great finisher, a great skill player. We noted here previously that he's gotten quite physical, and I think he used that physicality very well against Clare over the last semi-final. Like, particularly like when he gets the ball, he was there in front. He was able to shield lads off, shoulder lads away, secure the ball, either get a score, assist, or draw a foul. So there was something productive coming off Eoin Cody every time he got the ball the last day. Now, the difference is with Eoin Cody against Clare and Eoin Cody versus Limerick is he's now going to meet people who are as physically imposing as he is. So I just think that Conor Whelan and Eoin Cody, they're not the same type of player exactly, but they're very, very similar traits. And Conor Whelan did cause Barry Nash troubles. He caused Mike Casey an awful lot of trouble in the first half. But then when he went on Dan Morrissey, there was the trouble kind of subsided a bit, and that continued in the second half really. So I'm thinking, do they put Dan Morrissey, on Cody? And because Eoin Cody is so important, and I mean this with the greatest respect, if you can somehow, negate his influence and limit him to a point or so, you go a long way to beat Kilkenny, because I think he got one. Was it 1-5 last day?
Yeah.
Was it 1-5?
I think it was TJ 1-5. He got, TJ. They were basically one goal and 19 between them, weren't they? As I recall. Yeah, so, was it 12 points for TJ?
I think Balahill.
Sorry, Mullen got 2 points. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think TJ got 10. I think, and Mullen got 2. No, TJ got 12. Mullen got 2. And Eoin Cody got
1-5 for Eoin Cody.
Yeah.
So that lends itself to thinking that like TJ is going to finish up with again 9 or 10, because I always give like 8 frees regardless in every game to the free takers, give or take. And when you're someone as accurate as TJ, he's going to nail 9/10 of them, to be honest. And so if you, again, as I said to you, go back to an earlier point about the points from play or the scores from play for Kilkenny, if you can stop Eoin Cody, you go a long way to doing it. And so I think that's probably, and I don't know, Limerick historically would never have been a team who put major focus on individuals. They come across, they strike us as a team who focus on themselves, their own setup, their own play, their own game plan, and then let it be. And I'm just wondering, do they actually, I won't say vary from it a bit, but do they go and give some extra attention to Eoin Cody? Because I think in last year's final, I could be open to correction, he only got like a point or two. I think so, yeah. I don't think he was very well marshalled, in fairness. But then I think Mossy Keown got 1-1, Billy Ryan, etc. So it all links together, Will. Like how if Eoin Cody doesn't have the best day or has a great battle with someone and only comes away with a point or two, you need Billy Ryan, Mossy Keown, John Dunn. Them lads have to, Tom Phelan, all have to raise their games up and carry the rest of the load. That's just a necessity when you come to a final against a team like Limerick. So I think he's probably the same kind of person in terms of Conor Whelan and Eoin Cody, same preparation. So I'd imagine we might see Dan Morris pick him up.
Okay. How would you deploy him? Not that you'd want to give any advice to Limerick or Murph, but if you were John Kiley or Paul Kinnerk at the moment, how would you try and stop Eoin Cody?
I kind of just had it in my head that the likes of Mike Casey would follow him. I think they're going to want to have Barry Nash a little bit freer to go and roam up the pitch if that's what he so pleases. So, look, I think they're going to accept that Eoin Cody will be in and around the goal, and whether Dan Morrissey or Mike Casey are picking him up, I think they'll just keep it to, listen lads, we don't mind, we trust either one of you to pick him up here. And again, as Skehill said, I actually saw a few, I think Limerick people saying last week that they weren't happy about people saying that they let the system, they trust, like that Limerick trusts the system to, look after the problems. And like that's not an insult on any player. That's saying that Limerick have such a plan that they all invest and they all put so much into the plan that it's not a case of them deploying individual man markers throughout the field, that they do it individually like that. It's a case that they know that, well, if everybody is doing their job, this person shouldn't be shooting the lights out anyway. And within that, we want to make sure he's marked the whole time by either Mike Casey or Dan Morrissey, and on you go. I think it's very much that's the way they'll do it. Kilkenny, you could very well see Kilkenny throw something at Limerick that they won't expect. So the few things like that, if Kilkenny are looking at it going, okay, well, we expect Mike Casey or Dan Morrissey to take up Eoin Cody. Maybe Eoin Cody sits out for the first 7 or 8 minutes out around the half forward line. We put in 2 lads that maybe they're not expecting to be in there, and we just ask a few questions and see how they react. And then as it opens up a small bit, and maybe when Limerick don't notice, we'll send Eoin Cody back in, and him and Mossy Keown will hang in around there. Or maybe it might be a variety of TJ and Mossy and Eoin Cody drift out. I don't think you're going to see Eoin Cody staying there beached on the 14-yard line for the whole game, because Kilkenny have to cause Limerick problems. They're going to have to throw something at Limerick that maybe Limerick weren't expecting. And what are we expecting? We're expecting Eoin Cody to be in around the goal, doing his normal job. And I think that's where we're going to see the bit of variety from Kilkenny, and maybe get him to come out the pitch a small bit further. Because we saw in the league final, himself and Billy Drennan, the lads, were a little bit suffocated inside there when the Limerick system got to them. So that's where the benefit of the league final will come through. And I think Kilkenny will go, okay, we didn't reap much reward from this. How do we reap reward from these players for the final?
Well, Skehill, you're the ultimate out-of-the-box thinker. You love a bolter. If this was to happen, Eoin Cody comes out just a little bit. Got a gap in the inside forward line to put someone up there. Mossy probably plays full forward, you would think. Any bolters you can think of that you'd stick in there to try and confuse things?
But in this instance, it's difficult because Wiley Walsh, I know he's done it before, 11 years previous, but he seems to have assumed the kind of impact sub role. I don't mean that in a demeaning manner, but he seems when he comes on as a substitute and then creates a bit of havoc for opposition, and that's working well. So I can't see him starting unless there's an injury. Now, Mossy Keown came off the last day. Or is he fit to go?
I haven't heard that he's injured anyway, so I presume he's fit to go. Yeah,
you presume he's going to start as well. It's hard to answer that one, Will, because a lot of the Kilkenny players have similar styles, similar statures. You know, pacey, strong players. So no one kind of stands out to me where I'd say, yeah, I'll throw you in and just cause a bit of havoc for opposition. But like that, I don't think I genuinely believe I don't think Limerick actually care who goes in anywhere, whether it's Galway, Kilkenny, Clare, you name it. They just play their own way. So I don't know. Can I see a move that Kilkenny will adopt that will necessarily, quote unquote, upset Limerick? I can't see that kind of instance. So I'm afraid, Will, in this instance, I have no bolter.
Oh, well, this maybe speaks to what Kilkenny have, the options going to this weekend. You can click your pen at this point, because it's going to be me who says it as opposed
It's under the couch. 1 second, I've got my pen.
Go on.
Fell under the couch. Got it. Okay.
That was a big bang there a few minutes ago.
It was, yeah.
All right, so Murph, I expect the Hugh Lawler ends up on Gillane, because that seems to make the most sense. Where does Mikey Butler go?
Sure, he probably sticks with Flanagan, does he? It's like Tommy Walsh does provide very similar traits to Mikey Butler as well. In that,
that wasn't me. I didn't click it. That was something else.
Yeah, you held that out of the screen now, Will. Click it. What was I going to say? Yeah, but so like the options you have there is like basically obviously enough. Limerick play with Gillane sitting almost on the 6-yard box. Flanagan in front of them on the 14, and then Peter Casey standing out that bit further, shooting out. Tommy Walsh is probably suited to go with Peter Casey there and do that running out role and so on. But like, he'd be happy enough as well that if Mikey Butler was following Peter Casey, that Peter Casey was leading him into these groups of players where the ball is, because Mikey Butler is well able to come out with the ball in those situations as well. But I just think that what Seamus Flanagan provides in terms of, on any given day, Seamus Flanagan can turn up and score 6 points from playing. We've seen it in days where he just turns up and he's getting the right ball and he's well able to perform. Out of respect for him, I think that's where they'll put him. They'll put Mikey Butler on him to say, listen, right, Hugh Lawler, funnily enough, has gone really well with Gillane in terms of a matchup, as best as any team could do. And then if we're going to look at the next possible scoring threat, we're looking at Seamus Flanagan here, and that's where Mikey Butler goes. After that, then, you have Tommy Walsh following Peter Casey. So I think that's the way Kilkenny will go, and they'll be happy that the likes of Hugh will be starting deep there, and again, that threat is going to be there from that aerial ball coming in for Gillane, that he could just ghost in behind. Not that Hugh Lawler hasn't experienced previously. He'll be well warned. So I think that's the way Kilkenny will match up. And always with the carrot of, lads, listen, at the end of the day, you're all good enough to go and mark these lads. That's what we believe. If you get split up at any stage, grab a man and go with him and don't be too worried about it.
Where would you use in Skehill?
I was kind of similar. So we spoke with this last week. We were saying who would you deploy against Gillan, because he's the main threat at the minute. But again, like Murphy's hitting it in the head again. Like Flanagan has this ability, and they're all big game players. That's the thing. So like Hegarty is a big game player. Gillan's a big game player. So is Flanagan. So they could potentially hit you if you mark one or two of them. The lad can get 7 points. That's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. They have class in every situation, every aspect of the field. So the more I thought about this during the week, last week I was saying, sure, does it really make that much of a difference? And I mean that in a good way. Like if you put Hugh Lawler on Gillan or Flanagan, does it make that an awful lot of difference? And the only thing I kept drawing to myself back to was the high ball. Like we don't normally see Seamus Flanagan going upfield in big high ball in dangerous situations. He's normally an oncoming runner who spins out and either shoots or passes. Whereas Gillan in his form at the moment is deadly at winning high ball, ghosting behind you. So that's why I'd be siding towards Hugh Lawler. If this is solely from a goalkeeper's perspective, wanting that protection in front of you. Hugh was a great athlete, so he'll stem the runs for Gillan. He's got pace to match. He's actually deceptively quick for such a big man, wherever he gets it. So like you're saying to himself, right, he can play on the 3 position and he can go to the corners when Gillan makes those runs. So he's got all the attributes, you could say, that would lend itself towards negating Gillan. And like that, Butler is just this, like he's kind of the terrier type person. The guy who's on your heels all day, spoiling, hurling. And what he does as well, that we've seen in the last couple of games, specifically the Galway game, his goal and the last day, is he goes forward and he provides an extra kind of dimension, if you want to call it that, for Kilkenny, in the sense that he's moving forward. He's giving the opposition something to think about. So where we saw Tony Kelly going back towards his own goal, following Mikey Butler, the question I asked myself now is, will we see Flanagan go back that far? And Peter Casey, will you see them? You probably will, because it's part of the system anyway. So he's going to go attack it with an air of freedom, I'd imagine, because he's in really good form. He's in all-star form, that's for sure. So I think both Lawler and Butler have huge similarities, not physically, but the way they're playing, going forward. Hugh Lawler last day, Mikey Butler going forward, tight markers, athletic, pacey, and good ball players. So I think, well, it doesn't really, truthfully speaking, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but I would side with Butler or with Lawler Division Square solely because of high ball. That's it.
An hour in, I think it's a good time to probably bring in some of the listener questions that have come in. Last week, I think, was the highest ever viewership that we've had on the video on YouTube. I think Murph particularly, I think he did about 17,000 after the semi-final on Saturday, then back with 18,000 the night afterwards. He's an OTB rating guarantee, Paul Murphy, now at this stage. So fantastic to have such an audience, and they all listened as well. I hate doing the whole thing of, lads, if you could just give us a like on the way out and leave a comment in there, it makes a big difference. But there's about 200 likes in the video. The live chat was rammed, and there was a whole lot of comments afterwards, and just goes to show it helps a lot with the numbers afterwards. It helps us out a lot if you leave comments. So this week I thought, right, let's go to the Instagram family and see what they want to bring to the party this week. Evan Ahern 06, should Lawler take Flanagan and Butler on Gillan, or the other way around? I think the guys have probably answered that in quite a bit of detail a moment ago. So it goes from that, tactical innovations to things like this. Conor Duggan asked Murph, is he shook after his big day out in Dungarvan yesterday?
Oh, I didn't actually. Very shook. Sensible. I mean, this is going to be boring. Yeah, well, we went for. Say what?
I said you shook. Elaborate. Why are you shook, Murph? What?
No, I'm going to answer, Skehill, if you weren't fucking wasting me time here asking the question twice. Like, Duggan asked the question, right? Duggan asked the question here, and you've asked it the second time. No, we're going out for a team day yesterday where we went down, we played Dungarvan. Right good match now, actually, in fairness. But we were going for pints afterwards, but I got absolutely rocked with a dead leg about 10 minutes to go. And I've learned from previous experiences, horsing a heap of pints into you when getting a dead leg sets it back by at least 10 days. So I pulled the pin on it, but I got a few texts from a few lads this morning. All right, they were a little bit ropey, so I think I was best stay away from it. We actually had presumably Conor Duggan. Sorry, that was the name, wasn't it? Conor Duggan. That was gave the question. Yeah. Presumably he was at the match yesterday. We actually we had a right bit of crack during the game. There was a bit of a scrap broke out during the game. It was all friendly. Like the match was actually really good and really worthwhile for both of us. But randomly a scrap broke out during the middle of it. And about 12 players were involved. The usual crack, like, I mean, lads were pulling and dragging, fellas, hurls were flying, a few lads getting the jerseys ripped, but nothing serious. And the referee was from East Cork. They brought in a neutral referee for it, but the referee was from East Cork. And he came in, he said, instead of booking everyone, he just said, right, lads, 12 of you, come in here. So there were 12 of us standing there. And he was like, right, lads, listen, you're all hurling championship in 2 weeks. Just relax. No point in anyone getting injured. It was number 8 for Dungarvan. I can't remember his name, but he was wound up and he said, fuck it, it's brilliant. I love a bit of that. I'm sure all of us just started laughing. We went, right, go on, we'll go back and start playing. And there wasn't a bad stroke pulled in the game, in fairness. But yeah, good old crack. But no, sorry, to answer your question, I had no pints yesterday in Dungarvan, unfortunately, which is a great town to go for a few pints in. So if you're never there, I highly recommend it.
He's not shook at all. Question here. Did Skehill get out past Crow Park Hotel security with 2 pints in his hands just before Galway against Limerick?
One of them pints of humour.
Oh, fuck.
You were repaying the parking, were you?
Sorry, the Crow Park Hotel. That was the one, was it?
Yeah.
No, in fairness, we were all doing jobs there. I was looking after Aidan and Grace, in fairness. We got a chair for Grace so she could sit down. Pregnant woman she is.
I got the pints.
You queued for 40 minutes for pints?
Yeah, and I picked up, I just finished to get the pints. The next thing I was just turning away and Aidan Hart texted me to get him a pint bottle. Get back into the fucking queue again, get the pint bottle. But then I was caught for hands. So I grabbed a fella I met in Cheltenham last year and said, here, carry these with me. And we blazed past security. So yeah, the answer to the question is yes.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, respectful manner.
All the big questions this week at the Instagram are N80. Massive GA question I don't think has ever been answered before. What's your match day sandwich, lads?
Oh, God, big question. Match day sandwich. I'll be honest, it's a while since I've made a sandwich now going
mine is bacon and ketchup.
That is good though. That lasts well and that's a good one cold.
Bacon, ketchup and brown loaf with the tea. Oh, jeez, hard bit.
Oh, geez, I don't even want to open my mouth now because that's a good combo. I'd be a bit of a ham and coleslaw man now, but coleslaw wouldn't last in the car when it's warm. That's the problem.
Especially this time of year. League coleslaw's fine during the league, but
bit of tinfoil in the cold box. So if you break out the cold box, though, that's when people know that you're serious about what you're doing. There's actually a good clip of someone in the stand. Is it in the Kerry match yesterday? Did you see that on Twitter? I might send it on to you. Someone with an actual mug, a proper flask, the whole lot. So they were actually having proper cups of tea in a mug, full on, ready for the game. That's the preparation.
Definitely from Kerry, is it?
Yeah, that's preparedness.
I can't remember. I'll find it and I'll send it on to you. But that's the level to aspire to now.
It really is. Right, let's go to more match-based questions. I think they were the non-match-based ones. Actually, sorry, there's one other non-match-based one. Let's just bring a bit of levity to all this. 91-8-0. Ask Murphy if Arsenal are now going to win the league next season.
I'd like to believe they will, but I'm kind of one of those ones now. Like, it's hard to look past Man City.
But you've got Declan Rice, you've got Havertz.
Declan Rice, yeah, good Irish player, and got Havertz, and got Timber as well there from Ajax. So there's actually a good cohort of Kilkenny lads who support Arsenal, funny enough.
Who else supports them?
Tommy, Eoin Cody supports Arsenal, Henry supports Arsenal. I don't know if there are many more there now. There's a good few lads though. Like, I was on a trip there before Christmas, November. Damien Comer's a good Arsenal man. Ulton Harney of Roscommon, Sean Finn. Like, there's fucking serious Arsenal lads around the place now. So and Damien Comer is a fair man to travel to an Arsenal game as well. I think he went to about 3 this season. So and my only Arsenal story, or my other Arsenal story, would be we once had a penalty shootout in Carton House before on a training weekend, and lads had to wear soccer jerseys, and sure, Henry being Henry had to outdo everybody and wore a 0-4 Invincibles Arsenal jersey signed by the team. That's sicking you. And he won the penalty shootout then. It's sicking your shite now. But yeah. So sorry, there's an Arsenal tangent there.
I think we owe BG a couple of pods after the All-Ireland final. This could well be a pod where we try and pick a best Arsenal supporting 15 from the GAA by the end of it. So I've kind of marked that down as a tentative option as a pod towards the end. Right. Let's see. The rest of the questions are all based around the game, I think, here on Instagram as I scroll up and down here. Here's a nice one for you. Coming in from Shane Wallaho. Murphy and Skehill's favourite All-Ireland memory. So Skehill, give us your favourite All-Ireland memory. I presume it could be about what you remember or what you enjoyed going to a game. Or
Michael D. Higgins telling me, "Ma, you're very large."
I'm sure I can go to Sportsfile and probably find a photo here. But what was the size differential here?
I didn't know what to call him. Like, you know what I mean? You used to watching American television, and they're always saying Mr. President. And I've never heard him being called Mr. President, you know.
No, it's just
So
president.
I just said, "Howie Mike."
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to him. Like, do you know what I mean? Oh, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say.
Mike. Like, don't people even call him Mike? That's the problem.
Fergal Moore was the caption at the time, and he was walking. You know, he does the introduction, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Whatever. And he goes, "This is James Skehill." I said, "Howie Mike," and he goes, "Oh, you're very large." And he kept walking. Good looking. I said, "Is that normal?" But like, as Fergal passed me, he gave me this look as if, you know, kind of disappointment.
Yeah.
Why'd you call him Mike? Like, why'd you call him Mike?
Yeah.
Look at my Twitter handle, actually. Look at my Twitter profile picture. I think I have the president, Mr. Michael D. Higgins,
You actually do. So hold on. I'll put this up on screen now for a moment.
And
For those who are watching the vision in a second. Yeah, I've actually found a photo of you with the president and his good wife. You went to the Oris. Presumably, he just have the Galway team in for a bit of a reception.
I think that's kind of a regular occurrence now.
Okay.
Maybe COVID put it after that.
We never went.
You know,
we never got the invite.
Harry couldn't bring you riff-raff up there. It's for refined West of Ireland folk.
Sure, he's up around Galway, isn't he? He lives up around Galway, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's Galway. I think he's a chairman originally, isn't he?
Yeah, and he was from. I think he was born in Limerick, but sure, Limerick were up there as well. Definitely, they did a stint there, 2018.
Yeah, I'll find this now. Go on. You have a quick think, Murph, while I'm saving this photo to pull into the stream here. What's your favourite All Ireland memory then?
My favourite All Ireland memory. It's kind of. I suppose I was trying to flick between one or two. One of my favourite ones was Richie scoring a goal against Brendan Cummins in 2011, because it was kind of, I'd never played in front of the full house in Croke Park at that stage. So that was the first full 82,000, and Richie getting the goal in the second half. And it was an incredible goal, but it was kind of the first stage where I was like, oh, I think we could go and do this. Like, I think this is going to happen here now. Like, it was really getting to that stage where like we're really taking a foothold here, and because growing up hurling with Richie as well, there was always a moment where it's like, you're very aware that was Richie up at the far end. You know what he can do in your club. You know what he can do training sessions. But you could see that he like that bit of flair in All Ireland final, to control the ball and hang a top corner without touching it in the hand. I always remember that kind of moment, and like seeing the reaction on Hill 16 when he scored it. Like kind of, do you know, like ripple of the net? Like when you're down the far end of the field, Skehill will testify to this. All you can see is the ripple of the net. You know, that's you know. So I always remember, like, it was a sunny day. Ball, Eddie Brennan pops it off to him, and all you see is the ripple of the net and the reaction to Hill 16. I always remember that's a great moment that I'll go, that was brilliant. That's.
And Murph, do you remember? I always find, you know, when you're kind of a supporter or attending the games at Croke Park, the decibel level in the stands is far different than on the pitch. The pitch I always found was 10 times louder.
Oh, it's
obviously the sound and waves is heading down that way. But like that's something that, again, I know I was talking about Michael D. That was a bit of crack, but when the crowd goes full bore into a roar, like, it's absolutely electric. It actually gives me a chill thinking about it now.
It's amazing, yeah. Like, and it is something that
can't hear a thing. You can't. I was beside Johnny Cohen. I remember when Jimmer Canning got the goal the first day. That was a savage goal.
Yeah.
The roar that went up that day. Johnny Cohen was like literally from here, maybe 2 yards away from me, and I was roaring at him, and he just couldn't hear me at all. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It just goes to show the level of noise that you actually get exerted to.
It's absolutely crazy. Like, the concentration, and like even the thing of like with the other players there, where it'd be very loud, but there's certain instances where it goes above that normal rate of noise. Where like the likes of when Canning would have scored a goal there, the noise would be through the roof for that. When the likes of Tommy's catch or something like that, like in 2011, or there's moments that are just spark a kind of a bigger noise from the crowd. It's very hard to describe it unless you've ever been in the position, how deafening it is, and like how enormous the noise is. It's huge. And I would agree with you. You don't get that in the stand.
I agree with you. It has to be a certain incident. Like I find that the normal 5/8 of a supporter will clap but won't stand and roar unless something major happens. Yeah, like Tommy's catch. I was there at that catch. Like, that was just something that people wouldn't have seen before. You know what I mean? Regularly. So the normal 5/8 supporter now jumps and shouts as well. So that it all contributes to it. But it's class to be part of, I have to say.
Yeah.
Here's the difference in size, by the way. There you go.
There you are now.
Nice and tugged out, Skehill.
There, yeah. This is good.
Looking well.
Very well.
I always used to question the way he used to hold his hands. I never used to get it. I couldn't get it. See the way he's holding his hands?
Yeah, they're not quite interlocked. They're kind of, a few were locked and a few aren't.
What's happening? I'm like, what is that? You know, but
I don't know, he could have arthritis or something in his hands. Maybe it's uncomfortable to grip them together. I don't know.
Sorry, Will. Jesus.
I'm trying to be practical. You were the one who asked the question. You know?
Hi, Mike.
If the president is a watcher of the hurling pod, I'm sure he can get in contact. I think it's usually letters that president sent out, and he can let us know exactly why. But that's when Skehill met him for the second time, because you met him on the pitch, obviously, before the final. So that was the second meeting there at the Oris, which I thought was a nice one to bring up. But there we go. We go down dark alleyways on a tangent there. All right, elsewhere, let's have a look at this. That's one I'll hold off. Someone's wondering about who would transfer, and I just think that'll get back to the draft again if I go down that line. Gary O'Connell. And here's one for you, Skehill, to take first. If Limerick win, this question will come up so much next week if they do, are they considered the greatest hurling team of all time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think sometimes we get kind of blindsided a bit by the present. You know, the present seems to always kind of outweigh the past. Whereas, I can still vividly picture the Kilkenny teams of the mid 2000s, towards the 10s, and like they were awesome. Like, and they were a team where you come up against, and I've no issue saying this, like that you would actually be really concerned playing them like that. We're going to get fucking trimmed here. Do you know what I mean? And it's like there was nearly, what was the word I'd use? Nearly an aura associated with that team when they're in their pomp. You know what I mean? I just think at the minute with social media being so prevalent in discussions, let's say for sports now, people kind of get swayed by the present. So I will hold judgment if they win the game. Fair enough, in the manner they do so. Now I will say, what kind of might sway in their favour is the amount of games they've had to play to get to the Ireland stage. Like I say, they're playing probably, I'd say, an average of what is it at the minute, probably 6 to 7 games, depending on how they come out of Munster and whatnot. Whereas off memory, I think Kilkenny might have played, would you have gone 4, Murph?
Yeah, some years he played 4, yeah.
4, yeah. But again, like I find it very hard to compare eras. So like we're talking, let's say, flipping, from Anthem from 20 years ago onwards, like, so it's very hard. But it's if they went ahead now and did the 5th, for example. I know I'm talking way down the line. Don't get me wrong. Then I think it'll be hard for people to actually debate that they're not the best team. But right now, I think they're certainly there or thereabouts. But whether to pass them out is a big if, because I just think Kilkenny were awesome back in the day. Really, really awesome.
Similar question came in from Colin McCarthy on the Twitter. If, and it's a big if, and he's put if in capital letters in both instances using it here. If Limerick get over the line, is it fair to say, based on the format and competition and standard of opposition, that 20 to 23, 4 in a row is tougher than Kilkenny or Cork's efforts in the past? I guess that's going to become a big part of the debate. And the thing about the debate as well is, Murph, that, Cork or Kilkenny in their eras were winning it in the format that it was in. It's very difficult to use that as an argument against them.
It is, and that's the thing, because you might try and pigeonhole it to say, well, let's say Kilkenny and Cork and Limerick at the moment. Let's say Kilkenny, I'm jumping all over the place teams. Kilkenny of the 2000s and then Limerick of the moment. But then if you actually open it out, you're getting into the spheres of, like, if you're talking of the greatest ever, like if you were to compare, when people try and compare like Christy Ring to whoever, if you're bringing it to the present day of Cian Lynch or any of these, it's very hard to compare these things because the generational differences are just so big. Now, people might say, oh, well, if you're only comparing back as far as the Kilkenny team of the 2000s, one argument you could say there is, well, that was the format Kilkenny played in. They didn't dictate it. And the other argument you could say is Kilkenny were beating teams back then by 25 and 30 points. Like, they were absolutely... Now, I know Limerick people would say, well, they bet Cork in the All-Ireland final and, so on. But if you cast your mind back, and I wasn't part of those teams, like I drifted in and started becoming training panels. I was an observer as much as anyone else. Like, you can nearly forget at times that those Kilkenny teams were absolutely leathering teams. Like, the gulf or the gap in difference between Kilkenny at that time and the teams they were playing was absolutely enormous. Like, so whereas the gap isn't as big with Limerick, so you could, and again, but that's not a slight in Limerick. That's more of a reflection of the balance of other counties and the efforts other counties are putting in, that the chase and pack is so tight. So I just think it's very hard to call. Like, but I agree with Skehill there. If Limerick go and do the 5-0, it's very hard to argue against that. If that's what people want to say, it's very hard to argue against it. But in any of these conversations, I always leave it open to the fact that if I sit down and the three of us sit down and, like, let's say you were saying, Will, that the greatest player you think ever is Christy Ring, and here's why. I'd never say that, oh, you're actually wrong. I just think, yeah, you're right. If that's what you believe, 100%, on you go. And we'll never, unless Limerick go and win the 5 in a row, you never have an answer to these questions. So let's say if Limerick win on Sunday, but then they get knocked out next year. You'll still have people saying, but they're still the greatest team ever. It's that argument will never finish then, because you'll still have people who say no Kilkenny team, or you'll still have people who say Cork team, and so on. It'll never end. But I do agree with Skehill. If they get as far as 5, it's hard to argue against it then. And you just have to,
it's a massive if, like.
But sure it is. But look, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the worst thing I think people do with these things is wish away time and see if they can do it, and want to see can they do the 5 in a row. Enjoy them now. Enjoy what they're doing now, and see what falls out of that. But don't wish away the time. Enjoy what these lads are doing, And if those records come and those records are broken, well, so be it.
Yeah, I think the in a row thing sometimes has a bit too much emphasis on it, and maybe that's because teams, it took so long for someone to get to the 5 in a row, is that this Limerick team, if they win this Sunday, it's 5 in 6 years. If they're to win next year, it's 6 and 7. Then you're getting into the territory of those Cody teams, where some guys were around for all of it, but some of it was a little bit of a rebuild. But the fact is that they were beaten by Tipperary, and yet they came back to be the best team of the next few years as well. Sometimes that's forgotten about a little bit, because people go, their run stopped at 4. What I would say to that is, but hold on, the next 4 years they went on and won multiple Irelands again. So they had a longevity about them that's incredibly important.
Because when you think about pivotal positions that are in the Kilkenny team, I always think of number 1 and number 6. So you think of James McGarry and PG Ryan and David Harris and Owen Murphy. Then go into number 6 and you've got as far back as Peter Barry, Brian Hogan, Kieran Joyce, John Tennyson as well. Like, you're going through so many different eras and players in pivotal positions, and that probably counts for an awful lot of the Kilkenny team. So that's why I put huge value on that there was a turnover of players, because Cody's era was littered with, I don't know how many hundred players he had in that, but he like a Ferguson situation, he was able to win with those players and get the most out of them. So I think that can never be discounted ever. His ability and the player's ability to win and win and win, even though when there's a turnover in personnel.
Damien Cal, I can answer the second part of your question here. Any truth that Skehill has been watching Father Ted on his phone on the tractor? He has not. Nope. That's the second part of the question. First part is, from either team, which player would Skehill least like to face as a goalkeeper, as a goal threat on his watch if he was playing on Sunday? So which forward would you not like to be facing up against on either team?
I wouldn't say not like, I'd say most like, is the way I kind of rephrased the question, but it would be the same answer, if you know what I mean, just what way you look at it. I'd love to face Eoin Cody. I never played against the guy. I would have loved to play against him. Just because, like, again, he's exciting. It takes a bit of watching, so that's the other kind of players you want to play against. And then I'm a fan of Hegarty. I'm a fan of Hegarty. Played against him alright, but I like in big games, if we're talking that particular question towards the final, like, he's produced the goods in the final. So like, he's the kind of guy you'd be saying, this guy needs attention. And his goal last year was awesome. The pickup even being more impressive than the finish, if you ask me. So like, he produces big moments, and that's kind of what you want to face at times,
Here's one for you, from Will Norris on Twitter. My question is, does Limerick's first 30 minutes against Galway, when Galway had 4 or 5 good goal chances, show that Hannon's leadership, organisation and importance to the Limerick team? If he's out, can Kilkenny make hay as a result?
Like, if that's what people feel was the reason that Galway had the goal chances, I think there was probably a few reasons for it. I don't think it's singularly hinged on Hannon not being there, but I would agree that there was opportunities there. Like Mike Casey's stop from, was it Concannon, I think it was, which he kind of blindly stopped as well. Like he did the best as he could, standing up in the event that the ball might come through, that he was well placed, and he stopped it, and it was brilliant. But if that ball hits the back of the net, does it change the complexion at the time? And like, I'd be looking at that from a Kilkenny point of view, going, well, if those opportunities were there, I'd be really happy and confident that Kilkenny players could convert those opportunities. And the fact that we're speaking that there was opportunities there, you're going, brilliant. I'm not sure where they're going to transpire from in the game on Sunday, but there's hallmarks there to show that you can create opportunities against this Limerick if you ask the right questions. And I think Kilkenny can do that. So I would agree. I definitely looked at the Galway first half in particular. You couldn't take much from the second half, but definitely look at the first half and go, when you see those runs, like, when you see the ball Kevin Cooney played, that there's a way that you can, a lateral ball going across into a player that's running directly at goal, on the front foot, can open up the Limerick defence. Well, brilliant. You also know Limerick are going to be reactive to that as well, and they're going to learn lessons from it. But certainly the fact that there was moments there that Galway opened them up, and also in last year's final that there was moments like Kilkenny opened them up and got their goals when there was talk that there's no way you can open up this Limerick defence. So definitely there is moments there. Is it because of Hannon? I don't know. You'd have to say a certain element, possibly. We speak about, Hannon's organisational skills and what he brings to that defence. So it's hard to say specifically was it because of that, but you'd imagine that if he was there, he'd shore up a few more of those opportunities and maybe even cut them out if his presence was there.
Mick Johnson, this is more of an observation from Mick. Sunday he sees a 50-50 game, won't be much more than a puck of a ball either way. 2017 KK winning by 3, 2018 Limerick by 2, KK by a point in 2019, Limerick by 2 last year. Sunday won't be any different, has the makings of a classic, and Mick is a Kilkenny supporter because at the end Hon the black and amber. Tan 97, 2 questions, so you can take the first one, Skehill, and Murph can have the second one. So question 1 is the extent to which the Kilkenny defence were beaten in the air by Clare a concern versus Limerick?
Jeez, I wouldn't say there were. Maybe there was a couple of instances where they were outdueled, but I don't know what did it form a huge part of the game whereby it was an area of attack for Clare. You know what I mean? Certainly didn't sound to me. Maybe it did to others, because different people would perceive games in different ways. But when I was looking at it, I thought more Shane Donovan was the big get the ball away from that man for Clare. But the high ball, high fielding didn't kind of stand out to me. Now, if it was an issue, like it is, look, don't get me wrong, like you've got really big men in the Limerick forwards, but they're not really high ball. It's not their primary method of winning possession, if that makes sense, because they're all able to do it on the ground. So like, even though Hegarty is massive, don't get me wrong, and so is Hayes and these guys, they're still great stickmen on the ground. So I don't think that the high ball is an area whereby they're going to solely attack. I think the high balls are 14, which we don't see an awful lot from them, to be fair. They're usually a kind of a deliver to half forward line or crossing over to your corner forwards. That's usually the way they play. But when they do go to 14, Glenn is the danger man there for the game we spoke about. But I wouldn't be concerned. Like it's a rarity to see a Kilkenny team getting out-dueled. Put that way to you. Now there was concern last year with the manner in which the Kilkenny half-back line got beaten. So that's probably somewhere that look at different management, different personnel. Say what you like, but at the end of the day, like it was an area that was concerning for Kilkenny last year as a half-back line. So that could be an area that could be targeted again.
Would you have any concerns, Murph, or was that something you picked up on yourself last Sunday?
But the aerial battles, I didn't really pick up on it, to be honest. No, like, I mean, the few of the examples, I can think Peter Duggan's point there in the first half. But outside of that, I don't remember making any note of Kilkenny are being cleaned here in the air. I actually made note in the first half of just Clare being very wasteful driving long ball, which suited Kilkenny. So the long ball in that instance actually was suiting it. But I don't know. I couldn't agree with Tan there on that one, that I have massive concern, but look at here, if someone pointed out examples where they actually were and it just kind of went under the radar, happy days. But it wasn't something I came away from the game going, Jesus, that's going to be a problem against Limerick now.
Second part has a bit of a caveat. So can Kilkenny win with freeze? And the way Tan looks at it is Cody is the serious scoring threat, feels the half forward line doesn't score enough. So I suppose the second part, Skehill, to take that first, is there enough of a return off that Kilkenny half forward line?
I would say at present probably not. When you consider what they're returning to date, TJ is getting his frees, which is very important, guys, because if you miss frees in big moments, like you can I won't say turn a game, but it doesn't help getting back into a game at all. Like just look at it here, they scored 113 from play against Clare, which was the same ironically what Clare scored against them. But like, I know we can pick at stats, we can pick at figures and do all that, but they won the game. That's the way it is, right? And that's the biggest stat you get. Yeah, like they won the game. It's as simple as that. And they beat Galway. So they conceded a good amount against Galway, 218 from play, but they won the flipping game. So look, I don't think they're getting enough off the half forward line to challenge Limerick at the minute. And it goes back to my earlier point, they're going to have to get an awful lot out of all 6 forwards and the replacements, because with the way the game is played and the way Kilkenny are playing the game at the moment also, it's high octane, it's energy sapping. It's very difficult for people to keep that going for 70 odd minutes. So the replacements who come in, they're going to have to get big games. Like Murph said, Keane Kinney, Richie Hogan, these guys, Wally Walsh. So they're as important, if you ask me, about the people who are starting. That's how we finish as well.
Yeah, I think the point about the frees is they won't win with just purely frees. I think last year TJ got 9 points from frees in the final, and if you're going to match Limerick, you have to be somewhere in the 25 to 30 scores territory, because you can almost set your watch to them getting to that area, and it's very unlikely you're going to get 25, 30 successful frees during a game. Kilkenny, I don't know how you feel, Murph, about this. I think they'll have to score goals and they'll have to be efficient with their point taking if they're going to be on the right side of the result here.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Kilkenny are going out here to try and shoot the lights out. That's always the aim of any team, particularly in All-Ireland final. It's not about we're going out here to learn anything, we're going out here to do this, we're going out here to that. Kilkenny are looking to, if they can, in the first 10 minutes, happy days, shoot the lights out. And for as long as we can do it, that's always the aim. And exactly as Skehill is saying there, just about the stats, they can be deceiving in lots of ways as well, because not only is, let's say, you score 113 from play, but the manner of the scores and the time in which they come as well is very important, because like hitting the back of the net, yeah, it's always important. Teams want to do it, but hitting it at important times, that maybe where it keeps in the game or where it kills off the other team, like they can mean different things at different stages. And if I look back at like when Richie Hogan came on and he got the free in the corner, granted he was busted by Diarmuid Ryan, but he got the free in the corner. And that was a really important free that, it took about 2 minutes out of the game. We talk of game management and we talk of, playing the game at your pace. It took a minute or two out of the game and TJ popped the ball over the bar. I think he put it out to 3 points at that stage then. Really important period there of 2 to 3 minutes. And like that one score in a nutshell is like, that's a really strong score for us there to establish us finishing out this game. So we can look into the stats all we want. Like, yeah, absolutely. In broad terms, Kilkenny will want TJ scoring probably 10 points from frees. And after that, you're going to want your goal scorers. You're going to have 1 or 2 lads scoring goals. As a foundation, you probably want 2 goals to be scored. You want lads chipping in from all over the place. You want from around 20 minutes in, Kilkenny will want to have, and Limerick, they'll want to have maybe 5 different scorers from play at that stage, from wherever on the field. You'll want all your forwards to have scored by about the 40th minute. Like, there's all these measurables that if you were to write them down here, teams will go, well, that's a really good indicator. That's a really good indicator, and so on. So there's lots more than just singularly writing down, 113 isn't enough. I think, look, at the end of the day, this is an All-Ireland final. Wherever you can gain ground on a team and wherever it's going to put you in a positive stead finishing up, brilliant. But you're going to have to break that 24 scores mark, whether that be 222, whether that be, you're going to have to break that to beat Limerick. And that's the reality. And Kilkenny know that. We don't have to say it. Kilkenny know that.
Yeah. Want to touch on John Keenan as well, because a few people asked what do you think with the referee appointment. My first instinct when I saw this is a wonderfully romantic way for John Keenan to finish as an intercounty referee. So this is going to be his last ever game, because he meets the age limit next season, so he won't be on the intercounty panel. So his last intercounty match, whatever happens maybe with club later in the year, he's going to be the referee in the All-Ireland final for the first time. When you think that this time last year, everyone was praising him, I think, among the hurling community about the job he did in the Munster final. Few dissenting voices here and there, but generally I thought his performance in that Limerick-Clare game in difficult conditions in the rain was very well received. I think a lot of people have liked the job he's done in the championship games that he's reffed this year, Skell. And here he is now going out after being left in the cold for the knockout stages of the championship last year. He's now the top referee in the country, and his last ever game is going to be an All-Ireland final, which will hopefully be a cracker on Sunday. It's a great story for John Keenan.
And yeah, for him, that's hit the nail on the head for him himself. For us as a hurling public, I suppose he's probably the best appointment you can get when you're looking for, again, as a neutral, you're looking for a game of action. But the thing is, and I said it there previously, it was after the Tipperary game, whereby I give great praise to him because he was relatively anonymous. I mean that in a good way. Because if you have a referee who's in the limelight in some way, shape, or form, he's obviously getting the limelight for some reason, whether it be bad decision, indecision, you name it. But for John himself, it's great for him that when you rewind 12 months, that he was subjected to what I think was probably unfair treatment, to be straight up. When you consider what happened towards the end of the championship and the lack of games he got, whereas now I think there's an appreciation for what he has done. What he's doing, and what he has done, and he's got himself to be the top official. So I would say fair play to him. I think he'll probably just throw the whistle in the pocket on Sunday and let head off. But again, I always like his demeanour. And again, I said a couple of weeks ago that when you assess him on the TV, or because it's very hard to see in person, assess him on the TV, he seems to interact with the players in a very positive manner. He seems to be quite approachable. So if you're a player, let's say, and you can I won't say question the referee, but you can at least debate him, and he returns back, at least you've some kind of closure on that particular incident, right? Which is great. Nothing worse than when a referee just takes this arrogant approach or kind of an untouchable approach and tells you to go away or shut up. Or that's kind of disrespectful to a player who's trying to ask you a question. So that's why I think he's got great traits, and it's good for him. And I think it's just reward for what he's done in the game. Okay,
Murph, you're going to have a chance to analyse him on the BBC on Sunday, and the BBC are going to have Fergal Horgan there as well, which I kind of liked Morris Deacon in there for the games at the weekend, because they were able to throw over and say, right, Morris, is it controversial that that's a yellow card as opposed to a black card? And he could give you the rulings and the thinking of the referees. So Fergal Horgan, basically dominated the All-Ireland final over the last few years, and he's going to be on TV with you on Sunday.
Yeah, that's my understanding at the moment anyway. And that's what they said. They're following very much in the line of Morrissey Egan. And something I really liked from Morrissey Egan in the game, I think he was, someone analysed, it was the trip. Was it your man O'Connor? Was it from Kerry, the trip where he got the black card? And someone was saying, well, look, that's actually a bad call because of whatever. And that went to Morrissey Egan. And the thing is as well, before Morrissey Egan chipped in, people often can take their opinion from what the analysis comes from on, let's say, the Sunday game or BBC or whatever, and go home with that saying, well, Mickey Hart said it there, so that must be true, or Michael Murphy said it, or Henry Shefflin said it, so it has to be true. But when you had the opportunity where Morrissey Egan came in and said, oh no, actually, it's not just a pull down, it's actually he deliberately tripped him with his hand, which that is in the rule book, is a black card. Well, it straight away kind of nips any sort of, I suppose, momentum from people flogging the referee when you're like, oh, I actually got the call, appears to be correct. In a brief moment in the match, he actually got the correct call when a lot of people were calling it, no, that's not the right call. So apparently, that's what they're gonna do, and I think it gives good perspective on the referees as well, because it's one voice we don't often hear is referees and their thought process, and maybe it would lead to spectators or maybe viewers of television to maybe have a cooler head or maybe a more broad mindset on why decisions are made. If a referee like this now is able to go, well, the reason he's observing this is actually because of this rule and this is how it's interpreted. So yeah, that appears to be something. Hopefully he won't be used a whole lot. There won't be many controversial decisions, but nevertheless, he's there if needs be and might be beneficial.
That's our way of telling you, by the way, he's back in the BBC this coming Sunday. So you can look forward to catching Murph on the BBC, whatever about Fergal Horgan. And we can see John Keenan.
There could also be a queue of, I can't go back to Father Ted again, can we? I made the BBC.
Go on, you made the BBC. Someone did do a wonderful paint job of getting Paul Murphy's head and just sticking it on to Henry Sellers. And the lack of effort actually impressed me more so than sticking on the Photoshop and blended in his skin tone and all that kind of stuff. No, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for low quality efforts.
Yeah.
But if you want to see him before that, and he's in demand, and so is Skehill, and so are these special guests, come and see us on Thursday. Look at that. Tommy Welch, Joe Canning, Kieran Carey, the three of us, 3 days out from an All-Ireland final. Doesn't need a whole lot of hype scale. Bord Gáis Energy Theatre in Dublin. I can't think of a better All-Ireland preview all week.
Well, if I was on kind of the attendees kind of, I suppose, side of the table, I'd be going because, look, don't get me wrong, we're on the podcast, right? Obviously, we know it's a public forum. It's going out on Twitter and YouTube, so we have to be kind of reserved somewhat. Although it might look like it at times in what we say.
Right, here we go. This is not to give away a production meeting before we start. I would say don't be too reserved in the first kind of 15, 20 minutes. I reckon that's for the audience. Then we'll let the editors worry about the rest of it when it comes to the rest of their live pod. Yeah. But the first bits aren't going to make it in there anyway, because they're going to be there, welcome along, Skehill and Murphy have a few stories. I reckon be as loose as you want. And that's the benefit for giving the €20, quite aside from supporting the Dylan Quirk Foundation and Focus Ireland. If you're coming along, chances are they're the bits you're not going to get to see if you weren't in the Bord Gáis.
Now, Will, the last time I met somebody who said to me, it's all right, let's do what you want, I'm not going to call it, was the referee in the Boston 11-a-side, right, in Dublin. I met him on the street when I had a walk with Andy Smith that morning. I said, how are we going to ref this? He goes, I'm going to let it all go. That ended in a Royal Rumble. Okay, so you're after telling me now, right? Let it off there.
I was slightly worried that was going to go. The last guy who told me you can go out there and do whatever you want was Ewan Dolan's last year. And next thing he went off, and nearly every story that we told in the first half hour didn't make it past the censor. So someone had to sit down on the Friday and go, not sure about that story. That Gerald Nance story gone. There was loads of good material that was lost. But what I would say to that is those who went to Dolan's on that night and had bought their ticket got all of the material that wasn't allowed on YouTube. So, win-win if you go. Because a lot of the questions I got from Limerick supporters, and we will put the vast majority of this out. We've got a camera crew are all booked to go on the night. They're going to be shooting with, I think, multiple cameras as well from either side of the stall. So there will be really nice footage. I will endeavour after work on Friday afternoon to get the preview piece out first, and we might put the Legends interviews up on the Saturday, and we'll YouTube across the 2 days as well. So you will get to see quite a bit of the show, but there will be bits which I guarantee you management would say you're not allowed to put that out, or someone got libelled potentially in that. There's no way this is for public consumption. But if you're in the hall, you can come along and enjoy it. I think that's as fair as I can be to you, Skehill.
Why are you just aiming at me like?
I was just going to say.
Because you were the one who said about being careful.
Come here. I started off this podcast.
Oh, I love that.
Trying to be careful in the swear jar. Now the swear jar is full, right? So, like, let's just have a continuation of same. And Murph was, I tell you, I've been beside Murph in a pub setting. I'll put it that way to you.
Mm-hmm.
He's quite the storyteller himself now.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I assume, Murph, you've got loads of dirt on Tommy Walsh, particularly.
I wouldn't call it dirt. Tommy is a catalyst for crack. I think that's the best way to put it. Tommy can't sit still, like, and just inevitably in any situation, particularly after matches, lads would be excited, lads would be wanting to have a bit of crack. Tommy was usually the person that started it, not to say finish it, but he was definitely in the middle of it most times. So I definitely have a think before Thursday night about stories we've had, and I might have to. I'll throw one or two past Tommy, but I mightn't throw all of them past Tommy.
Don't worry.
I'll ambush him for one or two.
He's coming back from his holidays, so he's probably not going to check his text before he arrives in the Bord Gáis. So everything is going to be brand new to him by the time he comes in. He'd be like, "Why didn't you check it?" And he'd be like, "Well, we'll sit you on holidays. Don't be bothering him while he's on holidays." The only person who I think is actually safe from stories here is probably Kieran Carey. Because I guarantee you, all of us on stage probably grew up admiring Kieran Carey, and we're going to just be like, "Yeah, geez, you were class." Like, I can't believe Limerick didn't win Northern Ireland during the mid-90s, and he's going to be pretty safe because I assume, Skehill, you and Canning have got ammo on each other.
Yeah, that's the thing. And Murph, I was just thinking as you were speaking there about Tommy, like, you're a better man than me, going back to him and run them by him. I wouldn't give a shit. Like, I just say them out. So, like,
we have two different approaches. So,
and they're going to end up in the same result, man.
Well, like, I've been on the receiving end of, like, I'm very aware that I might be facing Tommy this year at some stage in the club championship as well. So, like, Tommy with the red helmet on him is still Tommy with the red helmet on him from 20 years ago. So it's a formidable man if he has the blood up. But. Yeah, I'll see.
Kenny is a good crack too, though. Like, I suppose everyone would associate him as being, this class hurler and kind of businessman and see him on Sunday game. But, like, he is really good crack, and he's funnier than he. Obviously, in the RT, it's very hard to be comical or funny if you're there to do a job. Like, but he's a funny old devil, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm slightly concerned. Like, I'm slightly concerned about what he's going to say about me. Because he has an array, and I'd say he has 20 different incidents or stories about me, I'd imagine. At least, yeah. All of varying levels, don't get me wrong, yeah. So actually, I might have to have a word with him and tell him to go easy.
Well, I've just extended the show out by a few minutes. We're going to be on stage around about 7:30 on Thursday. If you're listening from the future, I'm sure the podcast of the show will be going up in the next little bit. But 7:30 we're due on stage, so it's going to be us basically having the normal podcast. We'll bring in Joe Canning, Kieran Carey, Tommy Welsh during it, and then we'll do a big preview panel towards the end. And even more importantly, if you're thinking about going during the week, what have Bord Gáis Energy set us up with? Wonderfully, they have set us tickets for the All-Ireland final. So what we're going to have is the first ever Hurling Pod Crappy Quiz, where it's going to be Team Murph against Team Skehill, along with whoever we pick out of the crowd, two people up against each other on a crappy quiz with the two lads. Winner gets to go to the All-Ireland final. Loser will buy you a pint and probably feel sorry for you for losing. Maybe I can wrangle a BG goodie bag possibly, so you don't have to go home with nothing. But basically what I'm saying is, you come along, you've got a chance to win All-Ireland tickets. You're not just supporting two wonderful charities. We've got All-Ireland tickets to give away, which are like gold dust this week, to try and go to the game between Limerick and Kilkenny. Before we finish up, lads, the one important question that I didn't ask, and no doubt this will get clipped later on, and the most important win, is Paul Murphy, who is going to win the All-Ireland final on Sunday and why?
Well, look, I said this to someone the other day. I said, I know Limerick are favourites. I know they are. That's fine. But you will not hear me say before the full-time whistle on Sunday that Limerick are going to win. Like, I fully believe that Kilkenny are going to win it. And the reason behind it is a few of the points that I've made earlier. Galway caused them problems. All things taken into consideration. This is an All-Ireland final. It's a different game than the semi. Galway caused them problems. Kilkenny showed that they went 8 points ahead of Galway in Leinster final. Granted, Galway came back at them. But again, they caused savage problems for Galway when they wanted. If Clare were playing on Sunday, people would say Clare would have enough to actually go and beat Limerick. Kilkenny bet both of them, and they bet both of them in a very structured manner, playing really good brand of hurling and causing the problems on their terms. can they do it? Like, they were within a puck of the ball of winning the All-Ireland last year, and I actually think they're in a better position again this year. You know, they seem to be getting that bit much more out of a few more of the elder players in particular. A few more of the younger players have really, I suppose, established themselves now as well. And the few breaks of the ball, look, some people can say it's luck or whatever, but look, you create your own luck, and Kenny just seems to be working hard enough that they're creating those opportunities. So, look, in my mind, I have full trust in whatever team Derek and the boys pick at the weekend. I've been chatting to a few of the lads, just seeing how they're getting on, and lads are just in great form. And that's always, sometimes it might seem like a very simple indicator, but I always feel that's good when you pass these lads and you're chatting to them, that they're just buzzing for it, they're really looking forward to the match. And I think as well, which is a really good indicator of a team coming into a final, like, none of these lads, they all obviously want to be playing, but they understand if they're not. They understand that there's a job for them, and if they're required, they will be brought on, and Derek has shown that. And there's savage buy-in you get from players when that is the case. And I just think all around where Kilkenny are this year now, I think, again, they're another step closer to actually really dethroning Limerick. Look, they're not the favourites, and nothing will change between now and match day. But as a Kilkenny person, and I speak for, you know, everybody in Kilkenny, we fully believe going up here on Sunday that, you know, it might work out for us, but at the same time, this could be a great match, and Kilkenny could turn over Limerick, something people thought couldn't be done at the start of this year. So, look, I believe Kilkenny by the smallest of margins, a point or two.
Is that the biggest compliment you could possibly give Derek Ling as well? That he comes in after 2 decades of Cody, after all the success that's happened, and 12 months on, Kilkenny are back into an All-Ireland final?
Well, it is, yeah, because, like, inevitably you were going to have the conversation of the comparisons of Cody and Derek, and I don't think anybody thought we're going to be in this position where that's pretty much kind of shaken off at this stage. There's no one really talking about that now, and it's not an elephant in the room, you know. And however he's managed that, I'm not really sure. But, like, look, we're coming into a final, and of course people are saying isn't it strange that we have an All-Ireland final that Brian isn't on the sideline, and you know, you're going to see the pictures of Brian up in the stand at the game and all these different things. But where we are now, like, the Kilkenny people are just looking at this going, Derek has done a fantastic job. The management have done a great job. It's been a brilliant year. Like, they've really enjoyed it. And, you know, there's a rejuvenation again, because I think people were concerned that when Cody stepped aside, we were going to be heading for barren times, you know. And Derek, in fairness to him, fronted up, took on the job. And here we are in All-Ireland final. And I don't think, not to say people didn't expect it, but they would have forgiven if we weren't in an All-Ireland final this year, while management were getting a spin on their own team and establishing themselves. So to be sitting here now, you know, a year on, and we're back in All-Ireland final with new management, sure, that's best case scenario. You couldn't hope for better.
Yeah. All right, Skehill. Who's going to win and why?
Well, first, I listened to everything Murph said intently, because, like, I was in his situation 2 weeks ago. You know, as kind of assessing the opposition, assessing our own position, and, like, you're nearly guilty sometimes when you're going up against Limerick to try and just turn the narrative a bit into your favour, you know. And I didn't hear Murph say one thing about Kilkenny that was turning the narrative. It was just kind of, I got more of a siege mentality out of you. That's what I'm looking at. Like, everyone Kilkenny says, right, let's just go at it. Like, and that was I was hoping that Galway would do also. Now, they didn't do it for the whole game, but when they did go at it, like, there's evidence there to show that Limerick can be got at, you know. So I just think if you've got everyone on a collective approach who is going the one direction, it speaks a lot. And I always speak of momentum, and that's why I talk, like, I suppose wrongly on my behalf, we're clear we're coming from, that they were getting momentum, that they would overtake Kilkenny, but, like, they met a tough force. And Kilkenny are never beaten, which they've shown in the last 2 games. So for me, it's a very, very hard one to call. But when I say all that, and I listen to what you're saying, Murph, and I kind of coming from the same position you were, I still have to put value on Limerick, because what they did in the manner in which they dismantled Galway, it wasn't chaotic. It was very calm. It was executed professionally. There was very little talk out of them, and they just completely blew Galway out of the water, you know, for 40 minutes. So when I look at that, and it coincides in with what I was saying last week, when I can see how the level they can get up to. You know, when I was saying about the league final, although not huge value, you know, the Ireland finals, etc. Cork, you know, the names, the games we've mentioned numerous times. When I have that in my head, that they can get to that level, I'm like, Jesus, that's no one beats them. That's just reality. When they get to that level, no one beats them. So, like, you're trying to say to yourself, it's ifs and buts, but I still think that Limerick have enough, and they deserve to be given the favourites tag, and they deserve to be said, like sort of us saying that they'll win the game. But I can see 2 points, you know, 2 points maybe 3 max. I find it very hard to see how they beat Kilkenny more than that, because Kilkenny are never beaten more than that. You know what I mean? They're only ever beaten by more than that when there's a numerical disadvantage. It's a lad sent off. Do you know what I mean? And I have to go back as far as to give me the year, Murph. Give me the year. 9. What years you beat?
19 against Tip.
19 against Tipperary, yeah. Where like it was Richie was wrongly sent off, in my opinion, and it was numerical disadvantage. That's the only time Kilkenny are beaten by, in my opinion, by more than a one score game. So I'm going to say Limerick, and I'm going to say 2 or 3.
Okay. Before we go, hurling, it is anyone's game. Off the ball, teaming up with the Senior Hurling Championship sponsors and our own sponsors, Bord Gáis Energy. We're uncovering stories highlighting the positive impact that hurling has had in people's lives. This week's competition winner, which is hosted by our friends at Bord Gáis Energy, is Tommy Comerford from Kilkenny. Tommy's 3 kids are obsessed with hurling, including his son Bobby, who suffers with mild cerebral palsy, but is included in the same way that everyone else is. Tommy's big hope is for him to be a flag bearer at Croke Park on a big occasion one day. Congrats again to Tommy, who's getting a pack from Bord Gáis Energy. Lads, it's been a pleasure. Weirdly, it's only a few days before we see each other again, and then we get to see each other again at the weekend afterwards for the pod after the final. Have a good All-Ireland final week, and looking forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Sound, lads. Talk to you then.
Bye-bye.
OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Bord Gáis Energy.
Hurling, it's